I did, didn't I? Okay. So, we are getting started with our first session of studying the book Separation of Church and Hate. And the intention of our format for studying is that Meredith and I will alternate teaching through this, and we will present kind of a summary of the chapters that we are covering, and then be mindful of the questions that we ask, that it's something if you got to read the whole thing in the book, yay, but if not, you would get enough from the summaries that you would be able to answer question. Oh, Glenn?
We're trying to get our computer up.
Okay.
I'm still listening to you. We're trying to get our computer up, but we're okay.
Okay. Okay, we'll leave them both on.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a summary that for the first two chapters in the book, and uh it's based on descriptions of the book structure themes from the Iowa City Public Libraries who created this. So chapter 1 is, well, first I would say that the introduction is not in here, which I found really fascinating because it tells a lot of the author's background, John Fugelsang. And interestingly enough, I think there are a few things in there that are going to affect how the material's presented and what his point of view, where it kind of comes from. So his parents were both very religious. His dad was a monk and his mom was a Catholic nun. And they met when they were both in New York, but then she took an assignment overseas. Now I forget where it was from or where she went to. Do you remember, Meredith? But
Oh, she went to, I want to
Malawi.
say like Malawi and to a leper
right,
colony.
right. Sorry, my dog just busted in the back door, so I need to close the door.
Okay.
Sorry. David is not here. He's over at Amelia's house, helping fix her dishwasher. So a dad's job is never done. Anyway, so while she was in Malawi, the his dad would write letters to her, sort of sharing information. And oh my gosh, okay, I'm gonna lock the door. All the steer. I love our back. They're called atrium doors. It's like a 3-panel door, but the one panel is the only one that actually opens. And as you can see, they're glass all the way down. And there's no other wall in our den that we can put a dog door in. That's the worst thing about our house. It's no dog door. We haven't figured that out. Okay. So he writes her informational letters about what's going on back at home. And so when she comes back, they decide they need to make it a thing. And so they were both committed to sort of, I think of it as classic Catholic activities. They're very focused on serving, sort of all the biblical Jesus things, treat others with kindness, welcome immigrants, you know, just all of the things that Catholic charities are known for. But they were pretty progressive, I would say, for their times. But also he admits, sort of conservative too. They weren't just firmly one side or another. And with politics, he said they were registered, I forget how he put it, but maybe like registered Republican, but mostly voted Democratic, but then didn't accept fully any of it. So he's a pretty a liberal and persuadable kind of person. And so really his where he's coming from in this book is that he misses and he thinks that a lot of people these days do miss the focus on the actual things that Jesus taught and how that is at odds with some of the way that it's our political system, but not just that. It is more about how there's a middle ground for everyone, for different religions, for different political parties, for systems. And so it kind of broadened my view of the what the book is going to be like or what it's going to be about. And it's not bashing any one group of people. He really wants to give you people, his readers, the tools to when you're in maybe a discussion that's going places that you're not interested in it, you feel like it's totally against the teachings of Jesus. Um, so his intent is to give you the tools to be able to have a discussion and maybe help them, probably not convert to anything, but at least make them think about, do you hear what you're saying, by treating people this way or whatever the situation is. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the intro. So, chapter one is an inconvenient radical Jew. And it's in this chapter, he focuses on his central thesis that much of what people today call, quote, Christian, especially in the context of political debate, often strays far from what Jesus actually taught. He reframes Jesus not as a figure of conservative piety, but as a radical teacher whose life and mission emphasizes compassion for the marginalized, resistance to coercive power, and a deep concern for social justice. Fugelsang draws on his own background, raised in a Catholic environment, and uses his wit. He is a comedian too. So he apologizes up front if he's a little bit irreverent sometimes, which I thought was funny. He uses his wit to challenge the literalist or politicized readings of scripture that have been adopted by some segments of modern Christianity. Early on, he sets up the contrast between Jesus's ethical, love-centered message and the way certain modern movements use Christianity to justify exclusion, domination, or cruelty. Seeing lots of that right now. Chapter 2 is titled Paul, Jesus's PR man, who is not Jesus. The second chapter shifts to examining how the New Testament was shaped after Jesus' lifetime, especially through the influence of Paul of Tarsus. Fugelsang argues that while Paul played a decisive role in spreading Christian ideas, that his teaching and emphases are not identical to those of Jesus himself, which has long been one of my issues with Paul. I've come to love Paul, but I haven't always. In effect, Fugelsang suggests Paul acted as a kind of, quote, public relations architect for the system of Christianity, translating Jesus's message into frameworks that later readers, institutions, and cultures could grapple with. However, he also underscores that Paul was a human, shaped by his own biases, context, and limitations, and that later traditions sometimes elevate Paul's interpretations above what Jesus actually said or modeled. This sets up a broader critique across the book of how parts of Christianity have drifted into legalism, cultural conformity, or political influence that Jesus himself never endorsed. So, what these chapters set up together, they establish the core mission for the book to separate true biblical ethics of mercy, humility, and compassion from the political, cultural, and institutional accretions that have cloaked them, often to justify power, exclusion, or hate. He invites readers to rethink common assumptions about Christianity by returning to the life and words of Jesus in context and by questioning how later interpretations have shifted those teachings. So, here are a couple of questions about these first couple of chapters. So, could you pick up from some of that, those summaries? What motivated the author, John Fugelsang, to write this book? And how do you think he would define the problem of religion being hijacked? He uses that term, that it got hijacked somewhere in there. So, first part, what was it that was motivating him to write this book?
It seems to
What
me like he was seeing things in the community at large that he didn't like and that were dividing people.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's trying to pull them back together,
Yeah.
teach them to live and let live, kind of.
Yes. Yes. Would totally agree with that. Meredith or Peggy, do you have thoughts about that piece of it?
I think that he was concerned too about how sometimes politics has taken a religious spin and in some ways tried to justify um you know cruel behavior or
Mm-hmm.
behavior that to look from the outside sometimes you're like, what? That's
Yeah.
that that doesn't track.
Right. Right. Yeah. Um, one of the examples, there's a possum.
No.
Olive, it's okay. This
What?
is going to be the challenge of doing this from home and David not being here. Usually he will grab her. Olive, come here. Sorry, I'm gonna go put the curtain across the door.
Okay.
Please. Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't in in um in reading the all I got to read was the foreword. I didn't read the rest of it. But I got the feeling that he um he didn't like the direction that the church was going in, and that have you heard the expression holier than thou Christian?
Yeah.
And I just, and, and that kept going through my mind as I
Yeah.
was reading the forward,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and that really upsets me when I run
Mhm.
into those types of people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've known a lot of them in my day.
Yeah. One of the examples that I particularly connected with that he brought up as, you know, this is one of the things that he was really bothered by was the whole movement to have the Ten Commandments everywhere and how that was Jesus would have never agreed with that. Um, it would have been the Golden Rule or the Beatitudes or something
Mhm.
like that, which if the group who was promoting and wanting that read what Jesus' ministry was really about, would have never wanted those on the wall. You know, they're not going to he especially lists all of the Beatitudes, and it's coming from quite an opposite direction from just the Ten Commandments. And I remember um, that push happening. I mean, it hasn't been that long ago,
Yeah.
and not understanding why would why would Christians ever insist upon that? I guess I've always been a part of uh, Presbyterian or disciples who are all Jesus-centered churches. And I don't relate well to ones that are King James Bibles only and, you know, nothing else will do. And uh, the dedication to having the Ten Commandments posted. I just didn't understand it and uh was frustrated because it seems like about that time was when uh I really started maybe not really wanting to be identified as a Christian. There was a period where I was like, man, I'm a Christian, but I'm not that kind of Christian. And it was a controversy for me, a controversial issue. So, do you all remember that push and what were your feelings at the time about it?
My thought was, do you really want to live by that? Can
Right.
you really do that? Do you
Hmm.
really want those on the wall? Think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and
Well,
a
it
lot of
depends
time,
upon,
oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead, Meredith.
No, I was just going to say a lot of times it seems like the Ten Commandments is more of a fear-based document, unlike the
Definitely.
unlike the Beatitudes, which are a love-based document or
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
text.
A it's a servant leadership model, which was what
Mhm.
Jesus's life was. And yeah. And and did you think at the time anything about, well, why do if this was supposed to be a land of religious freedom, why should the Ten Commandments of Christianity be up there, but not the tenets of Muslims or Hindus or any other religion? Why don't they get to put their stuff up on the wall? Um, and, you know, that was never going to be a part of the discussion. Uh, so I don't know. I remembering it bothering me at the time, but how
I
about
Yeah.
remember,
Tommy and Glenn, Sharon, Sherry? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I remember that push, and I was just thinking about that might have been a time when that was a time when our kids were Yeah,
Yeah.
probably what, Jenny, probably eighth gradish, something like that. And it's involved, but then thinking, I'm not sure that I agree with this. And eventually the kids not seeing that they didn't want that either. But
Yeah.
well, when you're coming from a very conservative Baptist background, you
Yeah.
know, you're the ones, hey, let's put them on the wall right now. So,
Right.
um, but when you allow yourself to be open-minded, that's when you realize that there's something with these kind of thing, something wrong with it.
I sat there and I was thinking about where the where this wall is. I mean, there are some places that would be appropriate and some places would not be appropriate.
Yeah.
I always thought of the Ten Commandments as being the original law.
Yeah.
And I can see it in a courthouse, I can see it in a law office, but that's about it. You know what I'm saying? Because it was the original law.
Yeah.
And
But mhm.
and what's there, honor thy father, thy mother, do not bear false witness,
Right.
do not commit adultery. I mean, those are
Yeah, they're
general
good
rules that
laws. Good rules.
everybody should take in hand. I
Right.
mean, that just and but that's the way I felt about it.
Yeah.
It was the original law. Oh, I didn't see it happening in a school. I didn't see it being put in a school because
Yeah.
people would take it in the context that I'm pushing my religious on you.
Right. And only this version. I mean, there again, it's not that I disagree with any of the commandments.
Yeah.
I agree that that's a great way to live. Um, but it's the original laws for the Jewish people. It was created by God for a specific people to guide them how to live. And I don't know that, again, if you're going to put Christianity's 10 Commandments on a wall, are you going to put every other religion's law up? And so, in that respect, I don't think any of it should be there unless you're going to represent everyone. Uh, I I
Well,
I see as two. We're not a Christian nation. Uh, we allow all religions and none. So I don't know. I just
I kind of think that's one of the problems with that whole thing is that the religious freedom that the country was established on was the old King James, follow the Ten Commandments stuff. And they
Mhm.
didn't think ahead to the incoming people that would have
Right,
different religions and
right.
what that would mean to religious freedom,
Yeah,
And I think a lot of
yeah.
Christians in some of the mainline churches are
Mhm.
still thinking that way. They're still
So
thinking,
focused on
yeah, this is a godly nation. This is
right.
established on Jesus Christ, but they're not thinking about the religious freedom aspect of it. It doesn't just
Yeah,
apply to dyed in the wool King James Version
right,
Christians. There
right.
are Muslims, there are Buddhists, there are all these other
Mm-hmm.
religions in this country now, and
Yeah,
they forget that. They're
yeah,
a little arrogant.
yeah, yeah, right. I do sense a lot of arrogance in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so part of what Fugelsang does is uh, actually document some of the things, like listing, okay, if you want to combat this kind of discussion, or it's even a way to work out for yourself, I don't like this, but I'm not sure why I don't like this. And so it'll say, well, here's why, because Jesus promoted these kinds of things, loving your neighbor, defending the downtrodden, money has nothing to do with your worth, all of these things, and tells you where in the Bible to find those things, to come back and have a conversation with that person that's adamant that the Ten Commandments belong on the wall. It's like, well, or even, uh, if they put the Ten Commandments, well, then put the Golden Rule up there too. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. What? Are you going to put that up there too? Or,
I
yeah.
would
Mhm.
rather see that up there than the Ten Commandments, to tell you the truth.
Well, sure, sure.
Yep.
Does that make sense? I mean, take
Yeah,
down the Ten Commandments and put up the Golden Rule, because that Golden Rule is generally in most religions.
Hmm.
right. And if you follow the golden rule, you're not going to break any of the Ten Commandments.
That's
So
right.
why do we spend time with impressing that? I don't know. Tommy, Sherry, Glenn, Sharon, do you guys have anything you would like to add?
Well, God, when Moses come out of the mountain, there's a reason God wrote the Ten Commandments. I know I'm
Yeah,
getting off left field here. And he knew what the people were doing.
right.
And whenever Moses went up into the mountains and come back down, he knew what Moses was going to walk into.
Yes.
So, and he more or less, when he seen what was going on, Moses, he to make his point, I guess is the best way of putting it. He
Mm-hmm.
throwed the tablet down, and it caught on fire. And but when we get back, you've sort of put me a big curve in this situation, because I don't know the commandments of the Catholics or the rest of the religions. I never have looked in that, studied them, and why haven't I? I guess I can be honestly say I'm not really interested.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
Catholics use the same Bible we do.
well, do they?
Yes.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
have some additional books that we don't have. But yeah, I was probably in my 30s, Glenn, before I understood that Catholics are Christians. They
Well,
they really are. They have
I'm
a
not saying they're
different
not.
structure and organization. They do
Yeah.
believe some things differently, but they use the same Bible we do. They believe in the same God that we do. Uh,
Well, I've worked with, because out there at the plant where I put all the 40 years in, most
yeah.
of the upper management were Catholics.
Uh-huh.
and you
Wow.
and you'd be surprised at some of the conversations that we had. And
Uh-huh.
I never read that kind of stuff in my Bible.
Hmm.
Of course, that's their opinion and my opinion. I didn't get no argument with them, but
Yeah.
I'd always think about and I've even had a Muslim that was my plant manager at one time,
Uh-huh.
and so I've been, but I never gave it much thought
Yeah.
on what
So,
their commandments was, and that's my mistake, I guess.
Yeah.
I worked with a Catholic for many, many years. He was my boss. I loved him. He was the most epitome of a Christian that I would ever know.
Yeah.
He lived by the mantra of love your neighbor as you would love yourself. And
Yeah.
he did things for people that no one would ever know that this man did. And he he truly believed, he just truly believed. He believed that Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
you couldn't come before the Father without believing in Christ. And
Yeah.
so, I think, and I also know the Apocrypha, which is the books that they have, but we also
Uh-huh.
have them.
We
Um,
just don't print them. They weren't ever accepted as our official canon, which is the books that are in the Bibles that we use.
So my thing would be back when they forgot what they were called. Tommy, you remember when they decided what books was going to be in the Bible?
The council.
That would be what we buy. What's that,
Yeah.
darling?
It was the Council of Nicene, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, the council.
Sounds right.
Right.
And today, if there was the Council of Nicene was today, what would we leave in
Yeah.
and what would we take out?
Right.
And
That's questionable.
Who decided this? It wasn't anything. I don't even know if they felt led by God to decide it. It was just what they felt like should be there and what shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as far as Catholics, that, I learned then that there was nothing to fear from a Catholic.
Yeah.
Because I have a sister that's a Mormon. I love her to pieces. We don't agree on some things, but that doesn't make her religion any wronger than
Right.
Presbyterian or or
Certainly should
Baptist.
not inspire hate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have sat through many of Baptist sermon that was against Catholicism and wanted to get up and walk out because they didn't know what they were talking about. We are afraid of what we do not understand.
What we don't know and understand.
We don't understand, we don't know anything about it, right? Then we're afraid of it and we think it's wrong or whatever. So I had a lot to learn. We all do.
Well, I was going to say we all do. I'm not saying I wasn't criticizing them. All I was trying to point out was I've never actually looked into it.
Yeah.
As far as that depth is, but when I've even had some of them say, "Well, you got to believe in our God and this and that and the other." And I'd remind them, there's just one God.
It's the same God. Yeah.
I don't care what religion you are. There's just one God. Now, how we get there, there's lots of different ways you can get there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that their commandments or their rules was any right or wrong. It's just that I never really thought about looking into it that deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, I didn't either. I was scared to death that I was going to be working with the Catholic because of what I've always heard about them, not because of what I knew. Just from what I've heard about them.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with Catholics. I didn't even know a Catholic in school. There was probably some there, but I didn't know it.
Yeah.
So
I remember when Kennedy was running for president, and my dad sat there and he said, Baptist minister, of course. He sat there and he says, "I really hate to see a Catholic in the White House." And I said, "Why, Daddy?" And he said, "Because it gives the Pope a chance to get in his political ideas."
Yeah.
And that was my dad's major concern.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when I went to when Adam graduated from Ranger training, we were walking to the ceremony and there was a Catholic priest there. And bold little Peggy walks over and says, "Well, and who are you here for? I know it's not your son or your son." And he said, "This is my nephew." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I let him know I was a Presbyterian. And then I looked at him and I said, "But we're all Christians. We're just different flavors."
Right. Yeah.
We're all Christian. We're just different flavors.
Yeah.
And he seemed to appreciate that comment. But
Yeah, yeah. That's a good analogy for that. Yeah. Well, so the second question on the first chapter is how do you respond in the book Fuel Saint invites believers, agnostics, and atheists to quote take back the Bible. So bringing to light where what the Bible actually says may differ from what someone else is promoting. So, what fear or hopes does that raise for you to think that through this book it's probably going to give us some tools to have a conversation that you might not have been ready to before, a way to uh not say in my Bible, but you know in the gospel of Jesus, these are what he promoted and is the way that God showed us he wants us to live. So, how comfortable are you with doing that or being able to have that conversation with someone?
About as comfortable as I am jumping off a cliff.
Yeah. Yeah.
when I try to relate Christ to somebody else, I go to my personal experiences and
Sure.
let them see how Christ's teachings through my personal experiences have changed my beliefs, you know, because there was an old me and there was a new me. And
Yeah, sure.
and if that's my best tool
Yeah.
is, and there have been times in my life I did not expect God to step in and use other people to help me.
Yeah.
And FCPC was one of those times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how I relate, how I share Christ, his teachings with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Through
That's
witnessing.
exactly how I do it too, because you know, it seems like well, a few times, well, not a few times, several times that I have tried to quote something out of the Bible, it starts an argument.
Yeah.
Well, then I don't
Typically.
want that argument. So, like
Yeah.
Peggy says, if you give them let them show them by example, or let them know what what you have done in your life and what Jesus has done in your life. And I've got a lot of stories. I've told you a lot of stories, but
Yeah.
it just amazes me a lot of times. Just like I said, you try to just quote the Bible to somebody, and I'm not very good at quoting the Bible because to me it's always I feel like I'm getting ready to start an argument,
Yep.
and I don't want to do that. That's not what God put that out there for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but I agree what Peggy said too. I mean, I'm with Peggy on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
I think it's easy to sort of cherry pick sections of the Bible
Yeah.
to make it, you know, sound the way you want the verse to sound or with the outcome. I was just thinking about it though, and I was like, it's so easy now with everybody's phone that you could just say, well, listen, let's just look that up and read it together, you
Yeah.
know, because sometimes what gets quoted is the first half of a statement,
Uh-huh.
and several more verses down, it goes into more depth and it totally flips
Yeah.
what was said in the first portion of the statement.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 Well, I feel a little bit like I did when I first started seminary. I went and I wanted more knowledge because I felt like I was solid in my interpretation of the Bible. I was comfortable, but I was not comfortable at articulating why I believed something or why I would teach a kid this way or that. And so I went to build that faith foundation to where I wasn't scared to, have a conversation with the parents of one of the kids in my worship service and, well, why are you, doing it this way or that way? And I feel this book is a little bit like that for me because I've, uh, it seems now more than ever in my life, I'm at odds with a lot of my family in the way I feel like living out my faith. Like, are you sure you're what church are you in? Where do you go? Um, and so I hope that out of this book will come tools to where I can understand and be able to articulate why I don't agree with what they're saying, but in a non-offensive manner. Because Glenn, like you were saying, you don't feel like you should say, well, let's just look at the Bible here. That feels like you're going to start an argument right there. No question, most people are going to get defensive. Um, but there are ways that you can talk about these tough topics and leave it as a respectful conversation and you come away feeling like you were heard and the other person does too. And so I'm hoping I gain some tools for talking with some of my family instead of just saying, oh my gosh, don't leave me in the room with this person. David, get back here. Kind of thing. You can stay in here, but I'm going in the other room.
Well, one of my favorite expressions is we can agree to disagree and I still love you.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I've always felt that way, embarrassingly enough. There are some things that I just don't understand how anyone with a heart could promote this behavior, certain
That we're
behaviors.
experiencing today. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's hard. Well,
Yeah.
moving on to the second chapter about Paul. How does the author describe the difference between the movement of the historical Jesus who lived at the time in a certain place and time and the modern institutional church aligned with state power? So let me try a different way. So how does what Jesus taught and promoted, how does that align with our modern churches? And how does that align then with state powers, with legal powers, does it matter? Do they agree? Can you think of an area where they don't agree? If you think back to some of the teachings of Jesus, and it's like if you put uh, do unto others as they would do unto you, is that going to work in a capitalist economy like America? Would would most people buy into that? Servant leadership, interacting with the marginalized people in your community, equal treatment for women. Oh, there's so many. Do you feel like we're making progress? And which things bug you?
Do you really want to know what things bug me?
Yeah.
Political system now.
It's the legal system we have, and you know, I got to reading some about more and more about disciples. You know, most
Uh-huh.
of them got killed because they was martyrs.
Yeah.
Well, it's happening more and more so today. So that's just another sign. I mean, where do we stand for this? I mean, I realize that we're
Mhm.
trying to stop it, but it's just, you know, I go back to Charlie Kirk. We haven't talked about Charlie Kirk hardly at all. I have not, you know, just myself listening here and there, but as a church, we've never talked about Charlie Kirk. And I
Truth.
don't know. And I started reading, and I never knew the guy.
Me either.
Never knew the guy. Never listened to him. But since then, you know, they've been having revivals in his name.
Mm-hmm.
Even when he was doing it, they showed some sort of revivals in the huge stadiums, and there'd be thousands of kids coming down to the altar, and they
Right.
murdered him. You know, and so we're, you know, I think that puts a fear into people. Maybe not everybody thinks about it that way, but it doesn't put the fear in me. I'm still going to tell you about Jesus,
Right.
and you know, but I think that's the way, you know, the devil's turning these days, is trying to. That's how he's winning, trying to win, is
Mm-hmm.
you know, get people scared. But the devil has to show himself. He isn't like Jesus. Jesus, you can feel Jesus. The best thing I've ever heard was, when Jesus talks to you, but the way you know it is just like the blind man feels the sun. He can't see the sun, but he can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, it's a scary situation when you get to thinking about it. And as far as, of course, I've struggled with my brothers, you know, about they don't think women ought to be pastors at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, I tell them about the women in the Bible, you know, and the conversation ceases really fast. But
Yeah.
they told me that, you know, that they haven't in the last several years now, but there was
Mm-hmm.
a time they told me that I wasn't going to go to heaven because I got a woman pastor. Well, that don't work for me. Never has
Right.
and never will,
Right.
because I think everybody can minister
Yeah.
that want to.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'll shut
Especially
And
up.
that's kind of where too, Glenn, I think that the historical Jesus is different even than what's presented in the Bible. When you think about the women who did follow and were part of the group that he traveled with, but because of the culture and society that he was in at the time, they would never have been recognized as that in a written record.
Mm-mm.
Well, do you
And
think
so,
I think Jesus made that point for us to, because you know, I think he could
accept
foresee the
and
future.
include. Yeah.
Yeah, he prepared us.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, that was
He
part of
tried.
our
You're right.
that's part of our. Even though it happened so many years ago, that was
Yeah.
still part of our preparing us for us
Right.
today. I'm a firm believer of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
have something you want to say? I'll get off of here now. I love y'all.
We love you too.
Yes, we do.
Love you too, Glenn.
The best thing I love about this kind of study group is it's okay to agree to disagree and still love each other, like Peggy said earlier. I love that. And you don't have to insist on being right. about everything. I think it's so important to model keeping an open mind and being able to listen to someone and be willing to have the dialogue and to stay at the table, to not get mad. If I tell you my political affiliation and it's not yours, well, I'm checked out then. I'm not going to stay and listen to you. It has nothing to do with my political persuasion. None of this. I'm seeking to align my life and way of living and my thought process to what Jesus was like. And if I'm going to get it wrong, just like other people do, um, but I think we don't learn anything if we only say with someone and listen to someone who believes exactly like you do. Nobody wins with that. But I think it is a good benchmark to go back and when there's some kind of new trend against this group or that group or whatever, to go back to Jesus and say, you know, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Is this policy? Is this way of life? Is that meeting that way of life? Sometimes it doesn't. And so our faith and dialogue about it is important for forming how we want to or feel responsible to react to this world, this culture, this time that we live in. So I appreciate all of you taking part in this and being vulnerable and sharing things that the whole group may or may not agree with, but it's okay. Here's another last question. Can you identify in your cultural or religious context moments when alignment with power changed the message of mission or mission of faith? In our culture, religious context, when alignment with power changed the message or the mission of faith. And some of the examples that he gave about that would be I'll go back to posting the Ten Commandments, and the people who were all about having that happen were self uh, uh, designated Christians. Well, they weren't my kind of Christian. They weren't the Christian that it was because they were in power and the current political climate was all for that particular thing. But where are there other topics that you've seen that play out? Like right now, what's going with immigration and the way immigrants are treated. Um, Maybe that's one for you where you're like, well, it's the situation is where we are now. I don't think any of us would disagree that we would like a criminal out of our country. And if it was a drug runner or a mule or someone who is raping people as that they're bringing into our state, our country illegally, yeah, we want those kind of people caught and punished. We don't want them like that. But it's gone a lot further than that now. And so that's to me an example of one of the things where the climate, the political climate, the economical climate of where we are is not favoring people who come from a different country who are trying to and even who have come here and are legal but are being really harassed. Um,
If your skin is brown, any color
mhm.
tone, you're the target.
a target. Yeah. Yeah. And like I say, I'm not for people who are here to do meanness. But I do think maybe there could be a more careful way to identify those people. And if Jesus promotes turn the other cheek, that's kind of one thing that I think, even if we capture, arrest, identify a truly criminal who is illegally in our country, I still don't think we should beat them. That's one example. I mean, yes, we want to follow the process of sending them back or prosecuting them, whatever that may be, but they still deserve to be treated humanely. So that was one of the examples I thought of.
Well, or like Liam
Oh
Ramos,
God.
the 5-year-old that they detained, which was like,
What did he do? I mean,
Nothing.
he didn't do anything. He's
his
just
family was here. I don't want to say illegally. They were going through the immigration process. They were filling out their paperwork, and ICE detained them, and they couldn't get. I guess they couldn't get his father. Anyway, they took the little boy and like used him to get his parents to come out so they could get and detain the parents. And then it blew up into a whole circus, and they finally were forced to release them because they were not dangerous. They weren't the worst of the worst. They were following the
Yeah.
process.
They were trying to
Yeah.
right thing.
We've had college professors who were legal citizens of the U.S. taken and deported. We've had people who were born in this country, but their parents were here, probably illegal, but been here for 30, 40 years. And they send the kids away too. And places, people that have gone back to a country they've never even been to in their entire life.
Oh God.
So
That was hard.
that's really, really sad.
Yeah.
And because we're all immigrants.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if we come here in the 16th or 17th century, we're all immigrants unless we're native.
Right.
Like some of us are.
Yeah.
Some of us show it more than others.
It seems like that there needs to be a way away from beating and all of that garbage to distinguish who is eligible to be deported and who is not eligible to be deported. There should be a system set up to where ISIS doesn't just grab people and start beating on them. The things that have been in the news have been so upsetting.
Yeah.
And I have parallel to Gestapo.
Yeah.
It has that's the way it seems to me.
Yes.
That's the way it seems to me. And some people that I've heard about that were detained violently.
Yeah.
Were not deserving, and it just upsets me.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit there and you look at the rest of the world, and how is the rest of the world looking upon the United States? That's upsetting to me also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's not the way we were.
In our current government. Um, well, we know as parents, sometimes you have children or know of children that uh, the one who protests the most that so and so did this or they would never do that usually are the ones that do it. And our current leadership protested so much about this is what the Democrats would do if they were voted in, and he's the one who's doing it.
Yeah.
So,
But and to that point too, I would say, I mean, you can point to a lot of different times in our country's history that it's been different. It's not all one political party every
Right.
time. I mean, and he
right,
mentions that,
right,
there's a continuum in every different category that you could put a person in, and
right.
but yeah, we are in a really unusually targeted time. Um, Peggy, one thing I was going to mention was that chapter 4 is thou shalt not hate immigrants. And the questions, which I'll be really happy to discuss when we get there, is what biblical passages and historical context does Fugelsang use to discuss immigration and strangers? And two, how does that discussion challenge current religious slash political rhetoric around immigration? So I think that will really help me. This is one of those times where I think, oh, I don't like that. I don't like the way they're treating those people, but I'm not sure I can articulate very well why or why I think this part's okay, but this part's not. So I'm hopeful that that chapter will help with that.
Hope so too.
It's time for us to wrap up. So next week, Meredith will be facilitating the discussion. How far would you like people to read if they have the book?
Um, why don't let's try and do 3 and 4, chapters 3 and 4, I
Okay.
think. Were we pretty well finished with 2, do you feel
Yeah.
like, or
Yeah. Yeah. I
and
think
if
Mhm.
oh, go ahead.
No, just that I think it is enough uh to have people decide, you know what, this wasn't quite enough information for me. I want to buy the book and look further into it. So I think the purpose is fulfilled by doing it this way.
And I will what I would like to do is I will summarize chapters 3 and 4
Mhm.
and have some questions written out, and we can email those to everybody
Sure.
prior to our meeting so you can read through them ahead of
Yeah.
time if you'd
And
like.
that's, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if anyone has any last thing to get out of your system and say, now would be the time. And then after that, I will close this in prayer for the evening. So, any last thoughts from anyone? Okay, let's close in prayer for tonight. Holy One, we are so glad to stand on the promise that where two or three are gathered, you're with us. And, our whole purpose in studying this book and comparing what your word in the Bible says compared to what's happening in our life, it's an important thing to think deeply about and have conversation about. And I thank you for this group who are willing to have a discussion without being angry and mean to each other. It's such a rare thing, it seems like, in this life and times. And so I appreciate you being with us. We are thankful for your Holy Spirit that continues to guide us in our reflections and the actions that we take in our daily lives. So we give you all the thanks and glory for the guidance you give in so many ways. And we ask that you help our group to grow and appeal to more and more people, and that the discussion is richer the more that take place and take part in it. So we'd ask for your blessing for new growth and for more people to join us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Be
Good night.
blessed.
Yeah.